My 10-year-old daughter Emma has a heart condition. We moved to a quiet neighborhood for her health. Then HOA President Karen Mitchell decided sick kids don't belong here. She harassed us for months, put Emma in the hospital, and dragged us to court. She had no idea I'm a Navy SEAL. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Marcus Thompson, and for the past 3 years, I've been living the quietest life I've ever known. After 15 years as a Navy SEAL, after missions I can never talk about and places I can never name, I thought I deserved some peace. But peace, I learned, isn't something you find in a place. It's something you build with the people you love. My daughter Emma is everything to me. She's 10 years old, with bright green eyes that sparkle even when she's tired, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. But Emma isn't like other kids. She was born with a rare heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Her heart muscle is thicker than normal, making it harder for her heart to pump blood. Some days are good. Some days she runs around our backyard like any other child. But other days she needs to rest, to take her medications, to be careful. We moved to Willowbrook Heights 3 years ago, a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. Or so I thought. The houses are beautiful, the lawns are perfect, and there's a strict homeowners association that keeps everything in order. I bought the house because it was close to Emma's specialist at Children's Hospital, and because I thought the quiet streets would be perfect for a little girl who needed a safe, stress-free environment. Emma loved our new home immediately. She made friends with Mrs. Peterson next door, an elderly lady who always had cookies ready and stories about her late husband. She befriended the Johnson family across the street, whose twin boys were her age. She even got attached to the stray cat that wandered through our neighborhood, a orange tabby she named Sunshine. "Daddy, can we keep Sunshine?" she asked me one evening as we sat on our front porch, watching the cat play in our garden. I looked at her hopeful face, at the way she gently petted the cat despite her fatigue from her medication adjustments that week. "Baby, we can't officially keep him because of the HOA rules about pets. But we can take care of him, make sure he has food and a safe place to sleep." Emma's face lit up. "So he can be our secret friend?" "Our secret friend," I agreed, not knowing that this simple act of kindness would later be used against us. Karen Mitchell arrived in our neighborhood like a hurricane in a business suit. She moved into the corner house at the end of our street 6 months ago, and within 2 weeks she had somehow maneuvered herself into the position of HOA president. The previous president, Mr. Garcia, was a kind man who believed in community and helping neighbors. But he was getting older and wanted to step back from the responsibilities. Karen was different. She was in her late 40s, always impeccably dressed, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that never reached her eyes. She drove a white BMW with a license plate that read Rules 1ST, and she carried a tablet everywhere she went, constantly taking photos and making notes. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was helping Emma get ready for school, making sure she had her heart medication in her backpack and her emergency contact card in her jacket pocket, when there was a sharp knock at our door. "Mr. Thompson?" The woman at my door was holding an official-looking tablet and wore a badge that said HOA President. "I'm Karen Mitchell, the new president of the Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. I need to discuss several violations I've documented regarding your property." I glanced at my watch. Emma's school started in 20 minutes, and her morning routine was crucial for keeping her stress levels low. "Can this wait until after I drop my daughter off at school? She has a medical condition and—" "Mr. Thompson," Karen interrupted, her voice sharp and dismissive. "HOA business takes priority, and these violations need immediate attention. I've documented several infractions over the past month." Emma appeared behind me, her backpack on her small shoulders, looking up at Karen with curious eyes. "Daddy, who is this lady?" "No one important, sweetheart," I said, putting my hand on Emma's shoulder. "Ma'am, I really need to get my daughter to school right now. Can we schedule a time to discuss this later?" Karen's eyes narrowed as she looked at Emma, then back at me. "Fine. But understand, Mr. Thompson, that ignoring HOA regulations has consequences. I'll be back at 6 p.m. sharp." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking aggressively on our walkway. Emma looked up at me with worried eyes. "Daddy, why was she so angry?" I knelt down to her level, straightening her jacket. "Don't worry about it, baby. Some people just have bad days. Are you feeling okay today? Any chest tightness?" She shook her head, but I could see the encounter had already affected her mood. Emma was sensitive to tension and stress, and her doctor had repeatedly emphasized the importance of keeping her environment calm and supportive. That evening, Karen returned exactly at 6 p.m. Emma was in the living room, doing her homework while her favorite Disney movie played softly in the background. I stepped outside to talk with Karen, closing the door behind me. "Here's the list of violations," Karen said, handing me a printed document. "First, you're feeding stray animals, which is explicitly prohibited in Section 4.7 of the HOA covenant. Second, your lawn has several patches of dead grass, violating the landscaping standards in Section 2.3. Third, you have outdoor decorations that haven't been approved by the Architectural Committee." I looked at the list, incredulous. The outdoor decorations she was referring to was Emma's small garden where she grew sunflowers. The dead grass was a small area where Emma liked to play with sunshine, and the ground had gotten worn from their games. "Ma'am, with all due respect, these seem like very minor issues. My daughter has a serious heart condition, and maintaining a perfect lawn isn't exactly my top priority right now." Karen's expression didn't soften. "Mr. Thompson, everyone in this community has challenges, but that doesn't excuse violations of our community standards. You agreed to these rules when you bought your house. I expect these issues to be resolved within 2 weeks, or the HOA will be forced to take further action." "Further action?" "Fines, Mr. Thompson. And if necessary, legal proceedings." She turned and walked back to her BMW, leaving me standing on my porch, holding a list of complaints about my 10-year-old daughter's sunflower garden. Over the next 2 weeks, I tried to address Karen's complaints. I reseeded the worn patches of grass, though I knew they'd just get worn down again from Emma's play. I looked into the pet policy and discovered that while ownership of pets required approval, there was nothing explicitly preventing feeding stray animals. As for Emma's sunflower garden, it was located entirely within our property lines and visible only from our own yard. But fixing these issues wasn't enough for Karen. She returned with new complaints. "Mr. Thompson, I've observed that you leave for work every morning at 7:15, but your garbage can remain at the curb until you return in the evening. Trash cans must be removed from the curb within 2 hours of pickup." I explained that I was a single father, that I dropped Emma off at school every morning and went straight to work, and that I couldn't come home in the middle of the day to move a garbage can. I worked as a security consultant for a private firm, a job that used my military experience but allowed me to have regular hours to be there for Emma. "That's not my concern, Mr. Thompson. Rules are rules." The harassment escalated. Karen began taking photos of our property daily, documenting everything from a small weed in our flower bed to the way I parked my truck in our own driveway. She sent letters to the HOA board about every minor imperfection she could find. But the worst part was how it affected Emma. My daughter, who was already dealing with the daily challenges of her condition, began to notice Karen's constant presence. "Daddy, why does that lady keep taking pictures of our house?" Emma asked one afternoon as we watched Karen photograph our front yard from across the street. "She's just doing her job, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But inside I was seething. Emma didn't need the stress. Her last cardiology appointment had shown some irregularities in her heart rhythm, and her doctor had specifically mentioned that stress and anxiety could worsen her condition. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in November. I was running late picking up Emma from school because of an emergency meeting at work. When I arrived at Riverside Elementary, I found Emma sitting in the principal's office, looking pale and tired. "Mr. Thompson," Principal Williams said, "Emma had an episode today during recess. She experienced some chest tightness and shortness of breath. The nurse checked her over and she seems fine now, but we wanted you to know." I knelt down beside Emma's chair, checking her pulse the way the doctors had taught me. "How are you feeling, baby?" "Better now," she said quietly. "I just got scared when that lady came to school." "What lady?" Principal Williams looked uncomfortable. "A woman named Karen Mitchell came by earlier today. She claimed to represent the Homeowners Association and wanted to speak with Emma about your home situation. We didn't allow the meeting, of course, but Emma saw her in the office and became quite upset." My blood ran cold. Karen had come to my daughter's school? She had upset Emma badly enough to trigger a medical episode? "I'm going to take Emma home," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "And I'll be dealing with Ms. Mitchell directly." That evening, after Emma was settled in bed with her favorite stuffed animal and her medication properly administered, I went to find Karen Mitchell. She was in her front yard, trimming her already perfect hedges with scissors, making sure every leaf was identical. "Ms. Mitchell," I called out as I approached. "We need to talk." She looked up from her hedge trimming, a slight smile on her face. "Mr. Thompson, I hope you received my latest notice about your mailbox height." It's 3/4 of an inch below the community standard. You went to my daughter's school today. I certainly did. I wanted to understand the full scope of the situation, including whether your daughter's presence in our community creates any liability issues for the HOA. I felt my training kick in, the ability to remain calm under extreme stress, to think clearly when others would lose control. But I also felt something else, something deeper and more primal. The protective instinct of a father whose child had been threatened. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice low and steady. My daughter has a serious medical condition. She needs a stable, stress-free environment. If you ever contact her school again, if you ever approach her directly, if you ever do anything that affects her health or well-being, there will be consequences. Karen's smile widened. Mr. Thompson, are you threatening me? Because I should mention that I'm recording this conversation. She held up her phone. And threatening an HOA board member is grounds for immediate legal action. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you that my daughter is off limits. Your daughter, Mr. Thompson, is part of a household that consistently violates community standards. And now I have reason to believe that her medical condition might pose insurance and liability risks to our community. I'll be investigating this matter thoroughly. I turned and walked away before I could say something I'd regret. But as I headed back to my house, I heard Karen call out behind me. Oh, and Mr. Thompson? I've scheduled a formal hearing with the HOA board for next month. I think it's time this community decided whether your family is a good fit for Willowbrook Heights. Karen wasn't bluffing. Over the next 3 weeks, she launched what could only be described as a comprehensive investigation into our lives. She filed Freedom of Information requests about Emma's school attendance. She contacted our homeowner's insurance company with questions about liability related to Emma's medical condition. She even reached out to Emma's doctor's office, claiming she needed medical information for community safety purposes. None of these efforts yielded the information she wanted, thanks to privacy laws and medical confidentiality, but the harassment was taking its toll on Emma. My daughter, who had always been a bright, curious child despite her medical challenges, became withdrawn and anxious. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" she asked one night as I was reading her a bedtime story. "No, baby. Why would you think that?" "Because that lady keeps coming around and she looks angry all the time. And today at school, Tyler's mom asked me if we were going to have to move away." I set down the book and looked at my daughter's worried face. Emma was wise beyond her years, as many children with serious medical conditions tend to be. She understood more about adult situations than I wished she had to. "Emma, do you remember what I told you about my time in the Navy?" She nodded. "You said you protected people who couldn't protect themselves." "That's right. And now, the most important person I need to protect is you. That lady might be causing some problems, but I promise you we're not going anywhere. This is our home." But privately I was worried. Karen had succeeded in turning some of our neighbors against us. The Johnsons across the street had stopped letting their twins play with Emma. Mrs. Peterson still waved when she saw us, but she seemed nervous, as if she was afraid of being associated with us. Karen had also begun documenting everything with professional photography equipment. She hired a private investigator to watch our house and document any violations. She created a detailed file that she presented to every HOA board meeting, complete with photographs, timestamps, and legal arguments. The formal HOA hearing was scheduled for December 15th, in the community center meeting room. I received an official notice that was 12 pages long, detailing every complaint Karen had filed against us over the past 3 months. The charges ranged from minor landscaping issues to something she called disturbing community harmony. But the most serious charge was what she termed failure to disclose medical liability risks. Karen argued that Emma's heart condition posed a potential liability to the community, and that we should have disclosed this when we bought the house. I consulted with a lawyer, a woman named Sarah Chin who specialized in housing discrimination and HOA disputes. "Mr. Thompson," she said as she reviewed Karen's documentation, "this is clearly harassment based on your daughter's medical condition. That's a violation of the Fair Housing Act. We have grounds for a discrimination lawsuit." "I don't want to sue anyone," I said. "I just want to be left alone so I can take care of my daughter." "I understand, but sometimes fighting back is the only way to stop a bully. This woman has crossed several legal lines." The night before the hearing, Emma had her worst medical episode in months. She woke up around 2 a.m. with chest pain and difficulty breathing. I rushed her to the emergency room, where doctors stabilized her condition and adjusted her medication. The ER physician, Dr. Martinez, was someone we'd worked with before. "Marcus," he said as Emma slept in the hospital bed, Her stress levels are clearly elevated. Has something changed in her environment lately? I told him about Karen and the HOA situation. Dr. Martinez shook his head grimly. Stress is one of the worst things for Emma's condition. This harassment needs to stop for her health and safety. Emma was released the next morning, just a few hours before the HOA hearing was scheduled to begin. I almost canceled, wanting to stay home with her, but Emma insisted she felt better. "Daddy, I want to come with you," she said. "Baby, this is grown-up business. You should rest." "But it's about us, isn't it? About our home." I looked at my 10-year-old daughter, who had just spent the night in the hospital but still wanted to stand up for our family. "Okay, but if you start feeling tired or sick, we leave immediately." The community center meeting room was packed when we arrived. Karen had clearly mobilized her supporters, about 20 residents who nodded approvingly as she presented her case. But I was surprised to see that Mrs. Peterson was there, along with several other neighbors I hadn't expected. Karen stood at the front of the room with a presentation display, looking every inch the professional executive. She wore a navy blue business suit and had her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her evidence was organized in clear plastic binders, with professional photographs and legal documentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, "we're here today to address a situation that threatens the very foundation of our community standards. Mr. Thompson and his daughter have consistently violated HOA regulations, ignored community guidelines, and most concerning of all, failed to disclose medical conditions that could impact our community's liability insurance." She clicked through a slideshow of photographs showing our house from various angles, documenting everything from a small weed in our flower bed to Emma's sunflower garden. "Furthermore," Karen continued, "Mr. Thompson has been hostile and uncooperative when approached about these violations. He has threatened HOA leadership and shown a complete disregard for the community standards that we all agreed to uphold." I watched Emma as Karen spoke, seeing my daughter's face grow paler with each accusation. This woman was talking about us like we were criminals, like we were a threat to everyone around us. When Karen finished her presentation, the HOA board president, Mr. Collins, invited me to respond. I stood up, keeping one hand on Emma's shoulder for comfort. 3 years ago, I moved to this neighborhood because I thought it would be a safe, quiet place for my daughter and me. Emma has a serious heart condition that requires careful management and a low-stress environment. We've tried to be good neighbors, to follow reasonable rules, and to contribute to this community. I gestured toward Karen's display. What you see here isn't evidence of violations. It's evidence of harassment. This woman has contacted my daughter's school, attempted to access her medical records, hired investigators to watch our house, and created so much stress that Emma was in the emergency room last night with a cardiac episode. A murmur went through the room. Some people looked shocked while others seemed skeptical. "Mr. Thompson," Karen interjected, "you're being overly dramatic." I simply, "Ma'am," I said, turning to face her directly, "you told me that my daughter's medical condition might pose liability risks to this community. You suggested that a sick child doesn't belong in this neighborhood. That's not dramatic. That's discrimination." Emma tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, can I say something?" I looked down at her, surprised. "Are you sure, baby?" She nodded and stood up on shaky legs. The room fell silent as this small 10-year-old girl walked to the front of the room. She was wearing her favorite purple dress and her medical alert bracelet, and she looked impossibly small and vulnerable under the fluorescent lights. "Hi," Emma said, her voice quiet but clear. "I'm Emma Thompson. I know some of you are scared of me because I have a sick heart, but I'm not dangerous. I just need to take medicine and be careful sometimes." The room was completely silent. Emma looked directly at Karen, her green eyes bright and serious. "Mrs. Mitchell, you made me have to go to the hospital last night because you made me so scared and sad. My daddy says we should be kind to people even when they're not kind to us. But you're not being kind. You're being a bully." Emma paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I love our house. I love my sunflowers and my friend Sunshine the cat. I love Mrs. Peterson's cookies and playing with the Johnson boys when I feel good. I don't want to move away. I just want to be a regular kid in our neighborhood." She walked back to her seat, and I saw that there wasn't a dry eye in the room, except for Karen's. After Emma's speech, the hearing took an unexpected turn. Mrs. Peterson stood up, her elderly frame shaking slightly with emotion. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 38 years, she said. "I've seen a lot of families come and go, and I've never seen a better father or a sweeter child than Marcus and Emma Thompson. They check on me when I'm sick, they help with my groceries, and Emma always has time to listen to my old stories. Mrs. Peterson looked directly at Karen. What I've seen over the past few months isn't community leadership. It's cruelty. This woman has harassed a sick child and her father for no reason other than her own need to control others. Then something happened that Karen clearly hadn't expected. One by one, other neighbors began to speak up. Mr. Garcia, the former HOA president, stood up. Karen approached me 6 months ago about getting rid of what she called undesirable elements in the neighborhood. I thought she was talking about property maintenance. Now I realize she was talking about Emma. The Johnson family's father spoke next. Karen told us we shouldn't let our boys play with Emma because her medical condition might be contagious. We were stupid enough to listen to her for a while. I'm ashamed of that now. Even some of Karen's supporters began to look uncomfortable as more neighbors shared their experiences. It became clear that Karen had been systematically spreading fear and misinformation about Emma's condition, turning neighbors against us through lies and manipulation. Dr. Martinez, Emma's cardiologist, had agreed to attend the meeting to provide expert testimony about her condition. He stood up with his professional credentials visible. I'm Dr. Roberto Martinez, Emma's cardiologist. I want to be very clear. Emma's heart condition is not contagious, does not pose any risk to others, and is completely manageable with proper medication and care. The biggest threat to her health right now is the stress and harassment she's been experiencing. He turned to address Karen directly. Ma'am, your actions have directly contributed to medical complications for this child. What you've done isn't just wrong, it could be considered medical endangerment. As the testimonials continued, I realized that the time for staying quiet was over. Emma had shown incredible courage by speaking up, and now it was my turn to be completely honest about who I was and what I was capable of. I stood up again, but this time I let my military bearing show. For months I had been just Marcus Thompson, single dad. But I was also Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, retired Navy SEAL, decorated veteran of 3 combat deployments. Ms. Mitchell, I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who had led men into battle, you asked about liability risks to this community. Let me tell you about real risks. I walked to the front of the room and something in my posture made everyone sit up and pay attention. For 15 years I was a Navy SEAL. I've served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and places I'm not allowed to name. I've been awarded the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. I know what real threats look like and I know how to deal with them. Karen's face had gone pale, but she still tried to maintain her composure. When I moved to this neighborhood, I continued, I left that life behind because I wanted to be a father, not a warrior. I wanted to give my daughter a normal, peaceful childhood despite her medical challenges. I've spent 3 years being the quiet neighbor, the man who keeps to himself and doesn't cause trouble. I turned to face Karen directly. But you made a mistake. You threatened my daughter. You caused her medical condition to worsen through your harassment. You tried to turn this community against a sick child. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. In the military we have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. Every day you face new challenges and you have to be stronger than you were the day before. Emma has been living by that principle since the day she was born. She faces challenges every single day that would break most adults, and she does it with a smile on her face and kindness in her heart. I walked closer to Karen, who was now visibly trembling. So let me be very clear about the real liability risk in this community. I am a trained killer who has eliminated threats to American security around the world. But I chose to hang up that identity to be a father. However, if anyone continues to threaten the health and safety of my daughter, they will discover that some skills never fade. The silence stretched on for what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds. But here's what you missed, Ms. Mitchell, in all your investigation and harassment. You missed the fact that Emma is the strongest person I've ever met. You missed the fact that she has more courage and kindness in her 10-year-old heart than you've shown in your entire adult life. You tried to make this community afraid of a sick child, when they should have been honored to have her as a neighbor. Karen finally found her voice, but it came out as a trembling whisper. Mr. Thompson, are you threatening me? No, ma'am. I'm educating you. There's a difference between a threat and a promise. I promised my daughter that I would protect her from anything that could hurt her. You have become something that is hurting her. I walked back to Emma, who was looking up at me with wide eyes. Not scared eyes, proud eyes. The HOA board can make whatever decision they want about fines and violations, I said, addressing the entire room. But my daughter and I aren't going anywhere. This is our home, and we've done nothing wrong except exist in the same neighborhood as someone who can't tolerate a sick child. Mr. Collins, the board president, cleared his throat. I think we need to take a recess to discuss this situation. But before anyone could move, Karen stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. Her perfectly composed facade had completely crumbled. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "I've done everything according to the rules. I've documented every violation. You can't just ignore the regulations because you feel sorry for a sick kid." The room erupted in angry voices, neighbors calling out Karen's behavior, but she wasn't done. "That child is a liability. Her medical bills must be enormous. What happens when she has a major episode at a community event? What happens when she dies in this neighborhood and brings down property values?" The moment those words left her mouth, the room went dead silent. Even Karen seemed to realize she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Emma stood up slowly, walked over to Karen, and looked up at this woman who had just wished for her death. "Mrs. Mitchell," Emma said, her voice small but steady, "I'm sorry you're so angry and sad inside that you want little girls to die. My daddy taught me to pray for people like you." Then my 10-year-old daughter, who had just been told she should die, walked back to her seat and took my hand. The aftermath of Karen's outburst was swift and decisive. Mr. Collins immediately called for an emergency vote to remove her from the HOA board, which passed unanimously. Several neighbors were already on their phones, and by the end of the evening, Karen's employer had been contacted about her behavior toward a disabled child. Dr. Martinez approached me after the meeting ended. "Marcus, I'm going to report this incident to Child Protective Services. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because Emma needs official documentation of the harassment she's endured. This will protect you if Karen tries to escalate things legally." Sarah Chin, my lawyer, was taking notes furiously. "We have a room full of witnesses to what just happened. Karen's statement about Emma dying was recorded. We can file harassment charges, discrimination charges, and possibly even charges related to endangering a child's medical condition." But I was focused on Emma, who was sitting quietly in her chair, looking exhausted from the emotional stress of the evening. "Baby, how are you feeling? Any chest tightness?" She shook her head. "I'm okay, Daddy. I'm just tired of being scared all the time." Mrs. Peterson approached us, tears in her eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, would you like to come over for cookies tomorrow? I think Sunshine the cat has been missing you." Emma's face lit up for the first time in weeks. "Really? We can still be friends." "Honey, we were always friends. I just let a mean woman make me forget that for a while." Over the next few days, the full extent of Karen's harassment campaign became clear. She had contacted Emma's school multiple times, trying to get information about her medical condition and attendance. She had filed complaints with the city about our property that were completely fabricated. She had even contacted my employer, claiming that I was an unstable veteran who posed a threat to the community. Most disturbing of all, we discovered that Karen had been researching ways to have Emma removed from the neighborhood based on her medical condition. She had consulted with lawyers about having us declared a health hazard to the community. What we discovered next changed everything. Sarah Chen's investigation revealed that this wasn't Karen's first time targeting families with disabled children. In her previous neighborhood in another state, she had led a campaign that successfully forced out a family with an autistic son. Before that, she had harassed an elderly couple until they moved to assisted living. "Marcus," Sarah explained during our meeting, "Karen Mitchell has a pattern of targeting vulnerable residents and driving them out of communities. This isn't about HOA rules or property values. This is about her pathological need to control who she considers worthy of living in her neighborhood." The investigation also revealed that Karen had lied about her qualifications for HOA president. She had claimed to have a law degree and experience in community management, but she actually worked in insurance sales and had been fired from her previous job for discriminatory behavior toward disabled clients. Emma's school principal, Mrs. Williams, came forward with additional information. Karen had contacted us 6 times, claiming to be investigating whether Emma posed health risks to other students. She wanted us to isolate Emma from her classmates and provide detailed medical information. When we refused, she threatened to file complaints with the school board. Dr. Martinez provided medical testimony that Karen's harassment had directly caused Emma's condition to worsen. Emma's heart rhythm irregularities coincide exactly with the timeline of Ms. Mitchell's escalating harassment. This child's health has been directly endangered by these actions. But the most powerful response came from the community itself. The Johnsons organized a neighborhood barbecue specifically to welcome Emma back into the social circle. Mrs. Peterson started a petition to formally apologize to our family and to implement anti-harassment policies in the HOA rules. Even more surprisingly, Emma became something of a neighborhood hero. Children who had been kept away from her due to Karen's fear-mongering began seeking her out. Parents who had been misled about her condition started asking questions and learning about congenital heart disease. "Emma," said Tyler Johnson, one of the twin boys, "my mom says you're really brave for having a sick heart but still being so nice to everyone." Emma smiled. "It's not brave to be nice, Tyler. It's just what you're supposed to do." The neighborhood organized a fundraiser for the American Heart Association in Emma's honor, raising over $15,000 for research into pediatric heart conditions. Emma was invited to cut the ribbon at the event, wearing a special t-shirt that said "Heart Warrior Princess." Karen's legal troubles mounted quickly. The harassment charges were just the beginning. The Department of Housing and Urban Development opened an investigation into her discriminatory practices. Her insurance company terminated her employment when they learned about her pattern of targeting disabled individuals. Most significantly, 3 other families came forward with similar stories about Karen's harassment. The family with the autistic son from her previous neighborhood filed their own lawsuit, as did the elderly couple she had driven from their home. "She's facing multiple federal civil rights violations," Sarah explained. "Discriminating against disabled individuals in housing is a federal crime. The pattern of behavior across multiple states makes this a federal case." Karen tried to fight the charges initially, claiming that she was just enforcing community standards and that everyone was overreacting to her legitimate concerns. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and her own recorded statements about Emma dying were particularly damaging. In the end, Karen accepted a plea agreement that required her to pay significant damages to our family and the other families she had harassed, perform 500 hours of community service at organizations serving disabled individuals, attend sensitivity training, and stay away from any HOA leadership positions for 10 years. The legal resolution was satisfying, but the real victory was watching Emma return to being a normal 10-year-old girl. Her heart condition hadn't changed, but her stress levels decreased dramatically once Karen was out of our lives. Dr. Martinez reported significant improvements in her cardiac function at her next checkup. "Daddy," Emma said one evening as we sat on our front porch watching sunshine play in the garden, "do you think Mrs. Mitchell will ever learn to be nice?" I considered her question carefully. "I don't know, baby. Some people have so much anger and fear inside them that it's hard for them to see the good in others. But that doesn't mean we stop being kind." "I still pray for her," Emma said quietly. "Not because I forgive her for being mean, but because I think she must be really sad inside to want to hurt people all the time." That was my daughter, still finding compassion for someone who had caused her so much pain. The neighborhood changed after Karen left. The new HOA board implemented policies specifically protecting residents from harassment based on medical conditions, family status, or other protected characteristics. They established a community garden where Emma's sunflowers became the centerpiece, and they organized regular events that brought neighbors together rather than driving them apart. Mrs. Peterson became Emma's honorary grandmother, teaching her to bake cookies and sharing stories about her late husband's military service. The Johnson twins became Emma's best friends, and their parents made sure to understand her medical needs so she could participate in all their activities safely. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a conference for military veterans transitioning to civilian life. I told them Emma's story, explaining how my military training had prepared me to protect my daughter, but also how I had learned that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with courage, truth, and community support. "I spent 15 years learning how to neutralize threats to American freedom," I told the audience. "But it took a 10-year-old girl with a heart condition to teach me that the most important battles are won not through force, but through love, community, and standing up for what's right." The veterans in the audience understood. Many of them had their own stories of coming home and struggling to find purpose after military service. Some had children with special needs. Others had faced their own battles with discrimination or harassment. The skills we learned in the military, discipline, strategic thinking, protecting those who can't protect themselves, those skills translate to civilian life, I continued. But we also have to learn new skills: patience, community building, and sometimes just being vulnerable enough to let others help us. After the speech, a young Marine veteran approached me. "Sir, my daughter has autism, and we've been dealing with similar harassment from our HOA. Do you have any advice?" I gave him Sarah Chen's contact information and shared the resources we had found. But more importantly, I told him what Emma had taught me: don't fight alone. Build your community first, then fight from a position of strength and support. A year after the Karen ordeal ended, Emma surprised me by asking to write a letter to other kids with heart conditions. Her pediatric cardiology team had started a support group for young patients, and Emma wanted to share her story. This is what she wrote. Dear Heart Warriors, my name is Emma Thompson and I'm 11 years old. I have something called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which means my heart muscle is thicker than normal and sometimes doesn't work perfectly. Maybe you have a heart condition too, or maybe someone you love does. Last year, a mean lady tried to make my family move away from our neighborhood because she was scared of my sick heart. She thought I was dangerous or contagious, which is silly because you can't catch heart problems like a cold. She made my life really hard for a while, and even made me have to go to the emergency room because of all the stress she caused. But here's what I learned. Having a heart condition doesn't make you less important than other people. It doesn't mean you don't deserve to have friends, go to school, play in your yard, or live wherever you want to live. Some people might not understand your condition and some people might even be mean about it, but that's their problem, not yours. My daddy always tells me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. When that mean lady was trying to hurt our family, I was really scared. But I spoke up anyway and it helped. If someone is being mean to you because of your heart condition, tell the grown-ups you trust. Tell your parents, your teachers, your doctors. Don't keep it secret because you think it's your fault. It's never your fault that someone else chooses to be cruel. Also remember that your heart condition is just one part of who you are. I'm not just the girl with the sick heart. I'm also the girl who grows sunflowers, takes care of stray cats, loves Disney movies, and makes really good chocolate chip cookies, Mrs. Peterson taught me. You're not just your diagnosis either. You're a whole person with talents and dreams and things that make you special. Keep taking your medicine, listen to your doctors, and don't let anyone make you feel like you're broken or wrong for existing. You belong in this world just as much as anyone else. Your friend, Emma Thompson, Heart Warrior Princess. The letter was shared throughout the Pediatric Cardiac Network and eventually published in the American Heart Association's newsletter. Emma received dozens of responses from children and families around the country who had faced similar discrimination and harassment. Emma's story had impacts we never anticipated. Sarah Chin began specializing in disability rights cases and used our experience to help other families facing HOA discrimination. The Fair Housing Act violations Karen had committed became part of legal precedent for similar cases. Dr. Martinez started including information about harassment and discrimination in his patient education materials, helping other families recognize and address similar situations before they escalated to medical emergencies. The neighborhood of Willowbrook Heights became a model for inclusive community policies. Other HOA communities began adopting similar anti-harassment measures and disability awareness programs. But perhaps most importantly, Emma's courage inspired other children with disabilities to speak up when they faced discrimination. The pediatric cardiology team started receiving calls from families who had previously suffered in silence but found the strength to seek help after hearing Emma's story. We learned later what happened to Karen Mitchell after she left our neighborhood. The financial penalties from the lawsuits forced her to declare bankruptcy. Her pattern of harassment had been so extensively documented that she struggled to find employment or housing. She eventually moved to a small apartment in another state and took a job in data entry that required minimal human interaction. According to the court-mandated reports, she attended her sensitivity training sessions but showed little sign of genuine understanding or remorse. The community service requirement placed her at a center for adults with developmental disabilities, where she was required to help with daily activities under close supervision. Staff reported that she complied with the requirements but remained distant and resentful. Some people change when they face consequences for their actions, Sarah Chin explained. Others just learn to hide their prejudices better. The important thing is that she can no longer easily harm vulnerable families. Emma's reaction to hearing about Karen's situation surprised me. Daddy, I'm not happy that she's sad now, but I'm glad she can't hurt other kids like she hurt me. Even in discussing her former tormentor, Emma found a way to balance justice with compassion. 2 years after the Karen incident, Emma was thriving. Her cardiac condition remained stable with proper medication and care, but more importantly, her emotional health had fully recovered from the trauma of harassment. She had become something of a local celebrity, invited to speak at community events about inclusion and standing up to bullies. She always insisted that I accompany her to these events, not because she needed protection, but because she wanted to share the message that families supporting each other could overcome any challenge. At one school assembly, a child asked Emma if she was angry at Karen for being so mean to her. Emma thought for a moment before answering. I was angry for a while and that's okay. Sometimes anger helps you find the courage to fight back against unfairness. But staying angry forever just makes you sick inside, like having a different kind of heart problem. So I decided to use my anger to help other kids instead of carrying it around forever. The wisdom of children, especially children who have faced serious challenges, never ceased to amaze me. On the third anniversary of our confrontation with Karen, the neighborhood organized a celebration called Community Heart Day. It featured heart-healthy activities, information booths about cardiac conditions, and fundraising for pediatric heart research. Emma, now 13 and in middle school, had grown taller and stronger, though her heart condition remained a daily consideration. She had learned to manage her medications independently and could recognize the early signs of cardiac stress. The event drew families from across the city, including many we had met through the Cardiac Support Network. Children with various heart conditions played together in Emma's sunflower garden, which had become a permanent memorial to the power of community acceptance. Mrs. Peterson, now 85, served as the honorary chairwoman of the event. 3 years ago, she told the crowd, a little girl taught us that the measure of a community isn't how perfect our lawns look or how strictly we follow rules. It's how we treat our most vulnerable members. During the ceremony, Emma was presented with a Community Service Award for her advocacy work with other children facing medical discrimination. As she accepted the award, she looked out at the crowd of neighbors, friends, and families who had supported us through our darkest time. 3 years ago, a lady tried to make me feel ashamed of having a heart condition, Emma said into the microphone. She wanted me to hide and be quiet and maybe even move away. But my daddy taught me that when someone tries to make you smaller, you don't shrink. You grow. You find your voice. You build your community. And you never, ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. The crowd erupted in applause, but Emma wasn't finished. I want to thank Karen Mitchell, she said, surprising everyone including me. Not because what she did was okay, it wasn't, but because she showed me how strong I could be, and she showed this community who we really wanted to be. Sometimes the worst people in our lives teach us the most important lessons. As Emma spoke, I thought back to that night 3 years ago when she had asked me if we were in trouble, if we would have to move away. I remembered the fear in her voice and the determination I had felt to protect her from anyone who would harm her. I had been prepared to use every skill I had learned in the military to defend my daughter. I had been ready to be the warrior, the protector, the man who eliminated threats. But Emma had shown me a different kind of strength. She had faced down a bully not with anger or force, but with truth and compassion. She had transformed a community not through intimidation, but through courage and kindness. She had won a war not by destroying her enemy, but by refusing to become like her enemy. Looking at my daughter now, confident, articulate, surrounded by people who loved and respected her, I realized that she had become everything I had hoped she would be when I left military service to become her father. She was strong without being hard, brave without being reckless, and kind without being weak. The little girl who had been told she didn't belong in our neighborhood had grown into a young woman who belonged everywhere she chose to be. Today, Emma is 16 years old. Her cardiac condition is well managed and she lives a full, active life. She plays in the school orchestra, volunteers at the animal shelter where Sunshine, now officially adopted, came from, and maintains a 4.0 GPA while taking advanced placement courses. She wants to become a pediatric social worker, specializing in helping families navigate medical discrimination and advocacy. She's already been accepted to several prestigious universities, with full scholarships that recognize both her academic achievement and her community service. The neighborhood of Willowbrook Heights has become known as a model inclusive community, regularly hosting workshops on disability rights and fair housing. The Emma Thompson Memorial Garden, she laughed when they told her about the name, "Daddy, I'm not dead," serves as a reminder that communities are strongest when they welcome everyone. Karen Mitchell's name is rarely mentioned anymore, except as a cautionary tale in housing discrimination seminars. Her attempts to drive out a sick child backfired so completely that she ended up creating a more inclusive community and inspiring a national conversation about medical discrimination. But the real victory isn't in what happened to Karen. It's in what happened to Emma, to our neighborhood, and to the hundreds of families who found courage in our story. The heart of the matter was never really about HOA rules or property values or community standards. It was about whether we choose to build communities based on fear and exclusion, or on love and acceptance. Emma chose love. Our neighbors chose love. And in the end, love won. As I write this, I can see Emma in our backyard, now teaching neighborhood children how to plant sunflowers in the spring soil. Some of these children have disabilities, some don't. Some are from wealthy families, others aren't. Some speak English as a second language. Emma doesn't see any of these differences as barriers. She just sees kids who want to learn how to grow something beautiful. That's the lesson Karen Mitchell never learned, and the lesson Emma has spent her young life teaching. We're all just trying to grow something beautiful in the soil we've been given. The strongest communities are the ones that help everyone's flowers bloom. My daughter, the Heart Warrior Princess, taught a Navy SEAL that sometimes the most powerful victories are won not through force, but through an open heart and an unshakable belief that everyone deserves to belong somewhere. And in our little neighborhood, with its perfect sunflower garden and its not-so-perfect lawns, everyone belongs.